right, hello, hello. Welcome in. Today is just going to be fairly quick here. Let's see. This is actually going to be the first attempt on multi-streaming. So if the audio is bad, if the quality sucks, please don't be shy. Tell me, and we'll get this figured out. But yeah, it's already bad. Anyways, I hope you're having a great day. It's been a good day. I am like redoing my crafting area. So tomorrow I am getting this incredible like folding table so I can cut all my fabric and just have a place to really like lay things out, because I've been working on an ironing board and like this little square table that's behind me, and I want to say that's maybe like 4x4. So it's not great. It's not great. And yeah, so we are getting a new table. I actually have like a whole new storage system to my left here, which I'm really stoked about. I will be shooting like an update on that into our Discord. So if you're interested in checking out like crochet patterns that are free, showing off what you've been working on, we would love to see it. So definitely join the Discord if you're interested. But we are going to be working on a Morning Star Flail. If you don't know what that is, which is okie dokie, it looks like this. So that is the Morning Star Flail, and we are making, this is my second time making it. I am making notes so I can like write the pattern, and then I can just be more consistent, because the first one I made was kind of just meshed together. I kind of just did whatever the heck I wanted. I didn't keep track of literally anything. I was just like, those are about the same size, let's call it a day. So I'm hoping that this one will be a lot more consistent, as I'm being pretty diligent on that. But yeah, I'm really excited to be working on this. And then I have this great documentary pulled up that we're going to check out regarding the allegations of Matt Gaetz. I love Jay Aubrey's documentaries. They put together just very well constructed, very thorough presentations, and yeah, very well researched. So I'm a huge fan. I definitely recommend subscribing to them. But let's check this out. And then I am keeping today short. When this is done, okay, when this is done, we're gonna be done, because I have work tomorrow and I'm not looking for a late night. Tempting.
AJ and Big Justice appear on Jimmy Fallon alongside the Rizzler. Vanderpump Rules introduces an entirely new cast. Troye Sivan stuns for Butt Magazine. Jim Office is crowned sexiest man alive. And I'm sure there is something else equally important that happened too.
Donald Trump will win.
Donald Trump will be elected to return to the White House.
I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelly Boys, Andy Ross.
Oh yeah, Haley Welch announced hot coin. That's what I'm thinking of. I remember thinking the 2016 presidential election was one of the most chaotic and unprecedented events I had ever been unfortunate enough to live through at that time. But I also realized I was 16 when that all happened, and now with the ripe seasoned age of 24, I feel I can finally say with utmost assurance that the 2024 presidential election is what's truly deserving of that mantle. I mean, it was just nonstop shit, man.
I'm about to be
From Donald Trump selling gaudy, overpriced NFTs of himself, to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis launching his campaign from a scuffed Twitter space that sounded like it was taking place in Silent Hill.
Oh, we are working on the chain of the flail. And I'm actually going to put the photo of it down.
Reduced to mashed potatoes on live television, to his opponent's brain almost being reduced to literal mashed potatoes only a few weeks later. It really seemed for a little while that the turmoil would never end. The people in swing states
he's my
would never be
governor,
able to
and
watch
he
a
is
college football game
lovely.
again without hearing how Kamala Harris wants to send her kids to communism school to become trans. But now that the dust has
I
settled,
wanted him to win, but at the same time, I'm happy that I didn't lose him. But at the same time, I would have rather lost him.
That's a tall Florida with the president-elect appointing a new Batman villain sycophant to his cabinet every other day. Every time I get a new notification on my phone, I brace myself for the news that Jeffrey Epstein's corpse was just nominated U.S. Secretary of Education.
I've had to like change a lot of my social media, so I'm not getting as much political content because it is wearing on me mentally. I've been focusing on just like being active in my community and doing what I can where I can.
Possibly the most shocking and polarizing cabinet selection.
I help out locally, like through a few organizations, and that's how I'm going to stay sane in the coming years.
Before tragically withdrawing his bid for U.S. Attorney General and turning to an extravagant career on Cameo instead, which I'm sure you've enjoyed just as much. Join me in exploring the fiery rise.
Have you ever bought a Cameo? I got one for my sister as a gift.
Matt Gaetz.
But beyond that, oh my god, I got hiccups. Gross.
Women with the least likelihood of
Gross.
getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions. Nobody wants to impregnate you if you look like a thumb. But first,
I'm safe.
I want
Thank
to take a
God.
moment here to discuss
That's so
today's
weird.
beautiful sponsor, Aura. This may sound insane, but
Alright, I'm gonna be ethical on this one. I usually skip over, but
okay, sometimes
this guy reminds me of someone I worked with a few years back who was also super into making videos.
Including the possibility of your information being stolen.
No, don't steal my information.
What? This year alone with Dell and
I'm kidding. I'm on Red Note now. China can have it. Like,
compromising hundreds
it's
of
yours.
millions of their so-called
It doesn't fucking
customers.
matter anymore at this point.
Companies even come close to
Facebook
national
had like an
data,
insane
which
hack
reported a range of over
too. I think it was like
2.9
10 million people.
That's with a B.
And then our social security numbers were
which may
hacked.
include the social security numbers
Yep.
of every
See?
single American. If you
There
can't
you
trust
go.
a multi-billion
You can
dollar
sell. You can
business
buy me on the dark
conglomerate
web.
with your information, who can you trust?
Probably
In case
worth like
you've been living
$5.
underground or perhaps in a dimly lit cave for the past few years, Aura monitors your personal data across billions of data points like the
I'm
dark
gonna have
web
to count
and
my
public
rows. I'm
forums
kidding.
to
I have
alert you of
so many to
potential
do. This is like
Even
25
provide
rows
up
I
to
gotta do or something like that.
$5 in identity theft insurance in case the worst happens.
Identity
Aura
theft
also offers a myriad
insurance.
of other tools to keep you safe while you're browsing online, which includes
This sounds like
VPN,
something that like our
data
government
broker
should already be
opt-out to
doing.
prevent companies from selling your personal information.
Yeah, it sounds like they shouldn't be selling my personal information without my consent. What the fuck?
Passwords, as the name would imply. It's so much more. I can't even quantify how much more.
What
If you don't
doesn't
want
it
you or
do?
your family being exposed, just click the link in the description below and head to aura.com/jobbery to get your first 2 weeks completely free, which is more than enough time for Aura to find
I'm
out
actually
how
looking
much
for like a
of your data is already
NordVPN
floating around out
code.
there.
Thank
If you hate your
you.
family and don't care
I'll have to
about
watch
their
that
safety,
chapter.
you
He's
can
always
help
got
the channel.
NordVPN.
You can click the link and do that too. You can do it right now.
I have
Pause the
crazy
video, come
bruises
back
on my
later, or
forearms.
pause the video and don't come back. I prefer you do the first one, but huge thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video and keeping all of our data safe and secure.
Thank you, Aura. Please take my
The
money.
strange and unconventional life of Matthew Lewis Gaetz II starts about where you'd expect it to start. The literal house used in the Truman Show. Yes, you heard that right. The Gaetz family had actually purchased the seaside Florida property 7 years before it was selected as the pivotal film set in the 1996 Jim Carrey box office hit. A fun little piece of movie trivia that Matt's parents, Dawn and Vicky Gaetz, take great pride in. And frankly, I would too. I can't think of a better place for a lifeless husk of a politician to be raised. See, Matt comes from a long line of Republican lawmakers. His grandfather, Jerry Gaetz, serving as mayor of Rugby, North Dakota for a brief time before literally dying on the floor of the 1964 Republican National Convention just after giving a ringing endorsement of one Barry Goldwater, the controversial Republican nominee who had opposed the Civil Rights Act that same year before being topped by LBJ in the general election. Bro,
What
we're on
the
at 6
fuck?
states, man. That's actually kind of pitiful. But there's
Who
no doubt that
opposes the Civil
Jerry
Rights
Gaetz
Act,
weighed
you
heavy on
fucking
his
monster?
16-year-old son Don, who had tragically been watching the convention live on television when he
Okay,
witnessed his
that's
father
hilarious.
collapse of a heart attack in real time. The
Wow.
cameras zooming in close on his final moments as detailed in
What?
the 2008 piece in the Tampa Bay Times. As traumatic as this must have been, it
Hilarious.
hardly dissuaded Don from pursuing a pretty considerable 10-year stint in public service, climbing the ranks of the Florida State Senate to become its president in the late 2000s. This is where Don would begin to garner a reputation for doing things his own way, so to speak. His brash, no-nonsense personality meant he was a force of nature, as one colleague put it, who lorded over politics in the Florida Panhandle for a generation, according to Politico. As one Florida legislator stated, if Don's against you, he's against you in a very rough way, earning some media attention when he, for example, issued what was described in the Tampa Bay Times as a thinly veiled threat to one client who wanted to do away with Obamacare. Don, being a Republican, also wanted to get rid of the legislation, of course, but disagreed with his colleagues' methods. So he did what any sensible politician would do and harkened back to an 1800s-era Andrew Jackson quote that read, "Shoot the first nullifier who touches the flag and burn the rest,"
I don't
referring to a
think we should be
nullification
quoting
crisis
Andrew
the
Jackson.
seventh president was facing. Don, applying the quote to his predicament, added, "I have sworn an oath to defend the Constitution. Count me in with Andrew Jackson." Now, sure, this may sound dramatic, but it was hardly out of character for a guy like Don, who had also attracted criticism for evoking lynchings during a debate with African-American lawmakers on the topic of redistricting, as the article points out. But Don wasn't just known for his strong use of words. He also had millions of dollars.
I'm going to be saying that a lot, I
which only
fear.
increased his influence in regional politics. See, Don Gaetz was an early pioneer of the hospice industry. After noticing how many non-profit hospice organizations there were in the 1970s, Don saw an opportunity to get ahead, co-founding the single largest for-profit hospice provider in the country, Vitus,
You
back in the late
dirtbag.
70s. This was after he
For-profit
lobbied local government
hospice?
to oppose a licensing code on hospice work, giving Don's company a near monopoly in the state, as reported by the New Yorker. Don would eventually sell the company in 2004 for a 9-figure profit, which he then used to propel himself into the world of GOP politics.
Oh, you
Though he
piece
would,
of
course,
shit.
find himself in a bit of hot water when the
That-
Department of Justice brought a lawsuit against Vitus, accusing the organization of rampant Medicare fraud.
Yeah.
The feds alleged that the company had been overcharging consumers for Medicare from 2002 to 2013, eventually settling for a sum of $75 million a few years
Any
later.
type-
Despite being vice chairman of the board during part of the time the alleged fraud took
That kind
place,
of
Don told the
for-profit
Associated Press at the
is
time
so
that he had no role in
gross.
the operation of the
Like, you
company.
really
No
gotta
charges
say
being brought against him
adios,
personally.
sayonara
But his
to
long-time
your
role in the company
fucking morals
did mean
when
he
you
was
get into that.
absolutely loaded, and that his son
Goodbye.
Matthew Gaetz would be in for a pretty rowdy and affluent
God, my cat's going
adolescence. So
insane.
much so that former classmates told Business Insider that in high school, Matt would brag about a family friend who would wear the seatbelt from his dad's private jet as a belt to hold his pants up. He'd even reportedly use his dad's status as a lawmaker to threaten other students in his debate club, reportedly telling one girl that he was going to get his daddy to make some calls and have her college admission withdrawn. Hard to imagine then why these former classmates took to their 2000 alumni Facebook page to post memes likening the congressman to Butthead 20 years later, which is the second time I've seen one of his Florida friends saying he looks like Beavis and or Butthead, with multiple peers writing him off as an asshole and another labeling him as, quote, an emotional vampire because of the emotional energy
Sorry,
it
I'm
took
trying
to
to fix
interact
this
with
real
him,
quick.
quote, like, oh god, here comes Matt. According to those that knew and debated with him, Matt seemed to think his classmates were beneath him, both in status and debate skills. Quote, with his dad being who he was, one student told Insider, he, quote, thought he was better than everyone else, and we were just ants. That very
Gross.
affluence would rear its head again
That's
in 2008
concerning.
when, the night before Halloween,
Like, that's
a
not the kind of
26-year-old
demeanor
Matt was
you
pulled
want
over
for
speeding in
someone
his dad's BMW SUV
in public
on his way
service.
home from a local
Yikes.
nightclub. When a fumbling, watery-eyed Gaetz refused a breathalyzer and a field sobriety test, he was placed under arrest. Now, normally in Florida, you'd have your license suspended for refusing such tests, as well as have your refusal used against you in court. But Matt Gaetz, the son of a wealthy and powerful state legislator, didn't have to deal with any of that. Instead, his charges were dropped thanks in large part to someone who worked at Matt's own law firm. Whether any of this is just coincidence is up to you to
Alright, now I think
what
we're
we can
cooking.
safely say, though, is that Matt's
Hopefully.
supposedly questionable driving habits did make for some light fodder among those in his district. As Mother Jones cited, specifically naming a time he slammed into the back of one of his own constituents while talking on the phone.
Oh my God.
Those in Gaetz' inner circle were
Oh, thank
also
you.
more than familiar with his obnoxious frat boy
I
tendencies.
did my
he liked to
bangs
put on
today and they
display
did not
even
turn
after
out.
becoming a politician, with several
So
anonymous
thank you, I'm glad it
witnesses
turned-
describing Orlando
ended up
as
looking okay.
postcards that required
I was
Gaetz
gonna
to
put on
turn
some
off their
makeup and I was
phones
like,
upon
no,
entry,
why?
which is always is a good sign due to the pill-popping, high-profile clientele sharing illicit drugs like ecstasy and cocaine inside, despite their supposedly upstanding status as God-fearing Republican lawmakers. Among those in attendance was Matt Gaetz, who CNN confirmed in 2021 had sent an electronic payment to at least one woman after one of these parties, along with his close buddy Joel Greenberg, a man who had a tendency for sending these payments and who we will be discussing extensively a little later. It's been widely reported at this point that Gaetz also had a habit of showing nude photos of girls he had supposedly slept with to friends and colleagues at casual gatherings and even on the House floor, seemingly without the express consent from the people in the images or those seeing them, with one former high school friend of Matt's, Aaron Scott, recalling to Insider the time he whipped his phone out at a wedding rehearsal dinner to brag about a girl he had been sexually involved with, feeling the photo showed a private moment between the two. Scott told Insider the night vision picture appeared to depict the girl on a bed looking at the camera on all fours. 10 years later, those old habits haven't seemed to change at all, with aides and lawmakers both describing this tradition to CNN of sharing images and videos of naked women as a point of pride, as one source told the publication. Gaetz, of course, rejects these claims, lumping them all in with a massive extortion plot to ruin him and his family's lives. It's also been reported by ABC that Gaetz, with the help of his fellow lawmakers, participated in a fun little game around the state capitol that involved racking up points for how many interns, staffers, or female colleagues they could sleep with, a competition that also reportedly meant going after women they heard were virgins. While Gaetz may have been known to some as Baby Gaetz around this time, a play on the nickname Daddy Gaetz that had been given to his father, some women simply referred to him as Creepy Gaetz due to his apparent reputation in Tallahassee. That's three former staffers for Ron DeSantis told the Washington Post when Matt worked on the DeSantis transition team in 2018, he'd repeatedly tried to make sure the night ended with them in a college
I think one of the mics just doubled up.
His sister-in-law later stated on TikTok she had heard through the grapevine during her time as an intern in Washington that Gaetz, quote, had a reputation of prowling around college girls as a grown man, even finding himself in a little bit of hot water in 2018 when the office of then Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, was reportedly made aware of Gaetz leering at an anonymous young staffer. According to the Washington Post, he was briefly confronted but denied any uncoordinated behavior.
I've been
never went anywhere else after the staffer
everything so that way I will be able to like consistently recreate
One of the biggest reasons Gaetz ever achieved this position in government is thanks to his massively rich power broker of a father who executed every shady plan in the book to make sure his beautiful boy reached the glorious halls of Congress.
I don't know, I might reach out to the lady
Mother
who
Jones
asked
published
to
a
commission
fantastic report in
to
2019
see, like,
outlining Matt's path
what
to
her price
power
point
and pointed
is.
out more than a few discrepancies in
How are
his
your
journey.
EVs
See,
coming
after
along?
graduating law school in 2007, Matt went on to represent only a few clients before
Vivian,
announcing his
hello,
candidacy for state
welcome
legislature.
in.
The very same year he had that whole
I
DUI
heard
thing. His
about
resume included
Joanne's.
representing a homeowners
I'm
association,
wondering if someone
angry
is
over the
gonna
placement
step
of a
in and
volleyball
buy
net,
it.
and a debt collection suit where he went
I
after an
really-
elderly
they
woman
do
who
have
found
a
herself
terrific
unable to
yarn,
pay her medical bills. You want to
selection.
guess
I'm
who
worried
owned the
I
home care
am.
facility she couldn't pay? Just guess. It's really funny. Yeah, it's Matt's dad. It's Matt's fucking dad, man. But throughout
Oh
his
my
short time
gosh,
practicing
he got an
law, the
elderly
publication
woman?
reported Matt had
What a
only made about
monstrous
$29,000 from it in 2010, despite having a suspicious net worth of over $1 million by that time, pouring six figures into his own
Must be nice to be
campaign
born
mere
rich.
weeks before the
I wouldn't know.
GOP primary. Seeing that this was significantly more than what any of his opponents had managed to raise,
Vivian,
Matt
are
was
you
able to
working on a
easily
new
secure
project since
office
you
and
finished your
maintain his
flowers?
position at the state level until running at the federal level when a congressional seat spontaneously opened up in Washington. Despite financial disclosures indicating his net worth had dipped down to $90,000 in liquid cash,
Only
Matt managed to
$90,000?
magically sink another
I'm pretty sure my net worth
$200,000
is
into his
negative.
new campaign over the course of a few
Matching
months. Once again,
pillows?
easily surpassing any and all
That's so
fundraising by anyone who
exciting.
sought to challenge him. While it would have
Ooh,
been
you are a
obvious
glutton
and
for
extremely
punishment,
illegal
aren't
for his
you? You're
millionaire
just like,
dad to donate
what
six
will hurt?
figures to Matt's congressional campaign, many people assumed this to
Oh
be the
my
case, with Mother Jones
goodness.
outlining it pretty
Six
clearly how Dawn had
pillows.
likely
You're
skirted
crazy
federal law to
ambitious,
do
and
it.
we
See, Matt
love
did
it.
own a few real estate properties that he conveniently
My
managed to sell
goodness.
just days after that congressional seat opened up, going on to sell numerous vacant lots he had owned over the next
That's
few
very
months as well.
ambitious.
As Mother Jones stated, quote,
I
all
still
of
have
Gates'
the puff
real
flower
estate
pattern
was purchased
saved.
by the
Ooh,
same
I want to
buyer,
try it so
a company
bad.
called Trevoron, which it turns out is owned by his dad. What a weird little
Yes,
quirky
love the
happenstance,
pain.
right? Who amongst us
Exactly.
hasn't been in dire need of campaign funds, so we sell multiple properties to a
Dang it,
company
they're
that
doubled
happens
up
to be owned by
again.
our millionaire dad, which gives us enough money to destroy anyone who may want to challenge us for the seat, right? But if you thought it couldn't get any murkier, turns out Gaetz had also started up 2 super PACs during his time in the Florida House, where he'd raise money to be used in local elections. By the time he decided to run for Congress, these PACs had about $380,000 in funds still left over. So what did Matt do? He stepped down from his position, dissolved the PACs, and the money was eventually surrendered to a federal PAC by the name of North Florida Neighbors, which turned around and wholly supported Matt's bid for U.S. Congress. Another weird happenstance, because the law prohibits you from using state PAC money towards a federal campaign. This was very close to being illegal, with a complaint actually being filed, except it was shot down immediately due to the PACs technically being shut down before funding the federal entity. Pretty shady stuff, considering it was still the same money. Not to mention, the PAC also received cash from TLC Caregivers, a company owned by Don Gaetz, along with 6-figure contributions from other organizations run by more friends of the Gaetz family. If this all sounds a bit messed up, that's because it is. But in American politics, getting ahead is all about exploiting whatever legal loopholes may be there, using your wealth to your advantage to step on your opponents who don't have as much money as you and can't have this leverage. The truth is, what Matt and Don managed to pull off is not that uncommon. Still smarmy though, and was absolutely effective in sending Matt Gaetz to Washington. Surely, now that this father had tried so hard and succeeded in placing his son in a position of power, Matt would be more than willing to do all that he could to better the lives of regular people in his district. Right? Well, one of the first things he ever did was vote no on an anti-human trafficking bill that otherwise passed the House and Senate with wide support from both parties. According to Gaetz at the time, he agreed with the bill's goal.
I'm trying.
But found
I really want to get things like dialed in and locked in.
Somehow none of Matt's 534 colleagues in Congress agreed with this notion, as he was the only person to vote no on that bill, giving him the first of many viral moments, which would begin to build his reputation as a freshman troublemaker. At a time when his fellow Florida legislators were inviting hurricane survivors to the 2018 State of the Union, Matt took this opportunity to invite a notorious Holocaust denier, who also stated he believes in physical and mental differences between the races. Now, of course, Gaetz claims to not have known any of this about the man who had just showed up to his office and struck up a friendly conversation with the congressman the day before Trump's address, with Gaetz claiming he doesn't agree with everything the man has said or done, but assuring the media he was a perfectly polite guest all the same. I guess it just goes to show that if you ever wanted a free ticket to the State of the Union the past few years, all you needed to do was stand outside Matt Gaetz's office long enough. With the very first bill he ever introduced being a one-sentence unserious proposal to get rid of the EPA, Gaetz's track record as a troll would begin to speak for itself. Apart from hilariously introducing legislation that would allow citizens to pay federal income taxes in Bitcoin, the man would also appear in the news for wearing a gas mask to vote for emergency COVID relief, bursting into the hearing room to delay a deposition in the midst of Donald Trump's impeachment, sparring with the parents of Parkland shooting victims, trying to get them removed from a hearing on gun violence, and snapping into attack dog mode every time his boss found himself in some hot water.
I didn't think I
would say that the conditions in Haiti are deplorable. They are disgusting. I mean, it's everywhere you look in Haiti, it's sheet metal and garbage when I was there.
I'm so worried. Like, maybe I should have sold it for way more. Oh no.
Allegiance to the president became one of his hallmark personality traits pretty quickly. After 4 years of being one of his biggest sycophants in Congress, Gaetz went on to reiterate Trump's claims of election interference, baselessly describing the 2020 election as uniquely polluted, and even floating the idea of using special rules to reject the will of the voters, per The New Yorker. But the magazine also pointed out another potential, often overlooked reason for Gaetz's MAGA
weirdly enough,
loyalty.
the video is very quiet on my end.
During the final months of the Trump presidency, Matt Gaetz would reportedly make several attempts to convince the administration to grant him what's been described as a blanket pardon, a pardon which, according to what Trump attorney Eric Hirschman told the January 6th committee, would cover Gaetz for any crimes he had committed, quote, from the beginning of time up until that day, for anything. It was more far-reaching than the pardon President Gerald Ford gave Richard Nixon over Watergate. While Gaetz has denied this himself, it's important to remind you that this wasn't just some casual rumor made up by an anonymous source. It was a claim legitimately made in front of Congress under oath. Why exactly Matt Gaetz would be interested in such a sweeping exoneration for any and all crimes he may have committed up until the present day is a question that has been heavily debated ever since.
I was trying to figure out adding
oh my
music.
God, I'm so excited!
Thank you.
I'm so excited! I mean, just
so that like
everyone thinks you're crazy.
it wouldn't necessarily
People
be
think you're a pedophile.
a video, but it would definitely be like some lo-fi music.
Your charges against
in
him
the
are
back.
totally false. They're
I just
totally
like
false.
have some noise going, just personally for
Matt
myself.
Gaetz
My
was never a
ADHD would,
stranger to controversy,
insane if I
but
was
in
dead
spring
quiet.
2021, he became far more acquainted than he may have ever wanted to be. On March 30th, the New York Times published the jaw-dropping revelation that the Department of Justice had launched an investigation into the congressman, quote, over whether he had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old and whether or not he paid said 17-year-old to travel with him across state lines. Now, the rumors of him potentially stepping down from government to become a conservative news anchor were starting to make some sense. In fact, as the New Yorker reported, Matt was, quote, so consumed by the investigation that he had effectively stopped carrying out many of his official duties, citing one of his staffers who ended up stepping down and told the publication that Matt was withdrawn during this time as well. Really, this investigation had been going on for a while. Opened up under the Trump administration by then Attorney General Bill Barr, the probe into Gaetz was actually an offshoot of a much larger investigation into a man we mentioned earlier, a former Seminole County tax collector and a close buddy of Matt Gaetz, Joel Greenberg.
The media has tried to
Some of these
destroy
guys were just like, ugh,
reputation and
you'll look like you're terrible.
that which he represents.
Fight an emu.
Is that you and I
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you'll be fighting an emu. I'll be hiking. Thank you. It's just so
Joel Greenberg is known as a sleazebag convict extraordinaire, or in other words, a guy from Florida. It's just a joke. Some of my best friends are from Florida. That's how I know Matt Gaetz is so loved by the people there. But I want to take a break from Matt to introduce this Joel guy for a second, because it's his criminal track record and a proximity to Matt Gaetz that will largely shape the congressman's professional trajectory, whether he likes it or not. Joel is a flashy guy, okay? A real man of taste. As early as November 2020, the Orlando Sentinel was reporting on his misuse of more than $1 million worth of taxpayer money, along with racking up almost $400,000 on a company credit card to buy all sorts of supplies, including body armor, weapons, ammunition, and a drone, according to an audit. Which makes sense. I mean, he had to protect himself from the government investigating his various crimes somehow. This guy is like a real-life cartoon villain, with a federal judge later admitting, quote, I have never seen a defendant who has committed so many different types of crimes in such a relatively short time period. Now, keep in mind that CNN also points out that this judge has sentenced over 1,000 defendants throughout his career. One of the funnier stunts he pulled was creating a private blockchain company that would allow for a specific Seminole County cryptocurrency to be used for payments, according to the Orlando Sentinel, which reported that for a little while, the tax collector's website allowed citizens to make payments via crypto. Yeah, don't mind me, guys. He's gonna pay my income tax in Haktua coin this year and see you in jail. It gets even better when you realize Joel billed the tax collector's office $65,000 for the equipment needed for this little venture, which resulted in an overloaded circuit breaker causing a fire in the office, which was not covered by insurance thanks to Joel's hilarious recklessness, blaming the building's wiring and absolving himself of any wrongdoing saying, Joel told the Sentinel, quote, I didn't build the damn office. But now we get into some of Joel's less funny, more alarming crimes. For starters, a music teacher by the name of Brian Butte made the decision to run against Joel Greenberg for tax collector in 2020. Butte, a lifelong Republican, had accused Joel of orchestrating a nasty smear campaign against him, which kicked off after an anonymous letter was sent in to the school he worked at, accusing Butte of having an inappropriate relationship with a student just 2 mere weeks after launching his campaign against Joel, as reported by Central Florida news station WKMG, telling the outlet, quote, I'm educating other people's children, and I'm accused of something like that? I have daughters, so I have to explain this to them. Seminole County officials quickly found the allegations to be false. Fingerprints were discovered on the envelope of the letter, which reportedly belonged to Greenberg. Nice, man. You couldn't even wear a fucking glove for this shit. Would have been better to just have your drone deliver the letter at that point. When authorities closed in, Greenberg ended up pleading guilty to stalking the music teacher, admitted to sending the letter, as well as setting up social media accounts to bolster the fake accusations online. Just brilliant stuff. A really genius campaigning there. But that judge from earlier wasn't lying when he said Joel has committed many types of crimes. In 2020, he was officially indicted for identity theft as well. The feds accusing him of using his status as a tax collector with access to private records to use discarded driver's licenses to manufacture fake IDs for himself. Initially denying these accusations, police found a trove of fake IDs upon a raid of his office, resulting in Joel eventually being sentenced to 11 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to a litany of charges that included wire fraud, stalking, identity theft, procuring a fake ID card, conspiring to defraud the U.S. government, and sex trafficking of a minor. But Jay Aubrey, I hear you type from over there on your keyboard. What does any of this have to do with Jack Nicholson Joker impressionist Matt Gaetz? Well, hold on for a second, okay? I'll tell you. But be warned, things do get a little convoluted from here, so I'd advise you to just buckle in and hold on for the ride.
We gotta strap in.
See, Gaetz and Greenberg go way back, both being elected to the respective offices in 2016, with some close friends even telling Politico that Greenberg looked up to Gaetz as the firebrand he had become. And also, just so you know, firebrand isn't my word for him, that's the mantle Gaetz bestowed upon himself, as evident by the title of his memoir and podcast. Here we see the two men hanging out with fellow conservative firebrand Roger Stone, and here we see the two buddies palling around the White House with a Florida lobbyist who will become relevant in a second. As one close friend told Politico, Greenberg flat out idolized the congressman, and if Greenberg truly admired Gaetz this much for his powerful status in Washington and close proximity to the president, then it would only make sense he'd want to impress him, right? Get on his good side. As numerous outlets have reported by now, it seems Greenberg may have done just that by using the dating site Seeking Arrangements to procure women for the congressman and himself. After all, Greenberg was no stranger to engaging in sugar daddy relationships with younger women, as the feds outlined in their indictment of him. Friends of Gaetz and Greenberg have claimed the two bragged about sharing more than one girlfriend, with Politico speaking to 8 friends and associates who all said the same thing. Similarly, the Washington Post reported back in 2021 that, quote, Matt was never shy about his relationship to Joel and the access to women that Joel provided for him. As it was later reported, a letter allegedly sent by Greenberg to Roger Stone seemed to reveal the nature of the relationship he had with these women, admitting, quote, often it was a card payment, help with rent, a speeding ticket, or even a plane ticket home to see their family during a break, with the interactions often reportedly involving sex. Stone denies receiving this letter, and it's worth noting that while there is nothing illegal in sending money to someone, paying someone for sex is still illegal, as it would be a form of prostitution. The New Yorker went on to reveal some examples of these messages Greenberg supposedly sent to a woman on Seeking Arrangements in 2018. He asks if she can bring a friend for his friend. She says yes, that their ages are 20 and 21, and when she asked to see a picture of his friend, quote, a photo of Matt Gaetz appeared on screen. And in fact, here are the screenshots from that very interaction, courtesy of the U.S. House Ethics investigation.
I'll take a
Gaetz
look
told
at it,
Axios in
though.
2021 that sure, he's provided for women he's dated, quote, you know, I've paid for flights, for hotel rooms, I've been, you know, generous as a partner, but he's always adamantly denied that he's ever paid for sex. And that isn't the only claim Gaetz has had to deny. While Gaetz has had to deal with allegations that he slept with a 17-year-old since the New York Times story broke almost 4 years ago, allegations that have been repeated by, again, his own sister-in-law. For what it's worth, she did apologize for calling him a pedophile. She says she meant ephemophile.
First off, I
I've
just wanted to
seen
clarify,
this. The Irish people
now realize that I
try
used the incorrect terminology.
American
It is not
alcohol.
pedophilia, it is
I do
epiphilia,
like
which is being
those.
attracted
It's been a minute since I
to
saw.
like post-pubescent teens in the age range of 15 to 19.
Still, though, it's hard to talk about the sex trafficking allegations because the testimonies of the alleged victim and witnesses are, for the most part, sealed. At least until they were unsealed while I was working on this video. But for a while, what little details we had mostly came from what the girl's lawyers had told the media, what Greenberg himself appears to have written, and this lawsuit filed by that lobbyist I mentioned a minute ago, a guy by the name of Chris Dorworth. See, Dorworth filed a suit against Greenberg, Greenberg's family, as well as the alleged victim, claiming they had all lied about Gaetz. The suit would, of course, blow up in his face when the victim countersued and accused Dorworth of rape as well at these parties. Instead of fighting it, Dorworth dropped the suit. Throughout the legal back and forth, the testimony made by some of the girls ended up being referenced in these documents, which is how the media was able to report on the allegations before the House Ethics Committee secretly voted to release their findings this month. But how exactly is Gaetz involved?
Okay, I'll have to
Mind
look
you,
later.
before we go forward, these are all
I can't wait to
allegations
see
that
it.
Gaetz
I
has
love me a
denied,
bald
so
kitty.
everything should
My,
be taken as such.
my,
But
like,
I want you to at least have an
brother and
idea of
stepmom are
what's been
super allergic to
reported
cats,
up until now.
But they were telling me about a local cat.
As the claims go, Gaetz was attending a Lake Mary area sex party hosted by Dorworth on the night of July 15th, 2017. The victim, referred to as AB in legal documents, is said to have been a junior in high school at the time of the alleged events, showing up to the Dorworth house in her mother's car the night of the party. According to sworn testimony by a witness who goes by KM, the 17-year-old AB was seen, quote, naked in the presence of Christopher Dorworth. KM also testified under oath that AB, quote, had access to the bedrooms in the Dorworth residence to engage in sexual activities. The U.S. House Ethics Committee later revealed that they had received sworn testimony that Gaetz had sex with victim A at this party while she was 17 when he would have been 35, with the committee stating that, quote, Gaetz's actions were in violation of Florida statutory rape law. The committee also asserts that the alleged victim was under the influence of ecstasy at this party, and that she and Gaetz had sex twice that night, with at least one of those instances being in the presence of other attendees. According to the report, he had sex with multiple women that night. Though Gaetz denies his attendance completely, the report cites a number of people who claimed to have seen him, including an affidavit from his then-girlfriend, which claimed she and Matt both attended the party in question. In November, Joel Leopard, an attorney representing two women who were there that night, told CNN that one of his clients testified in front of the House Ethics Committee that as she was walking out to the pool area of the house, she turned to her right and witnessed Gaetz having sex with her friend who she knew was in high school.
She testified to the House that as she was walking out to the pool
what do you
area,
do? You're
she turned
allergic
to
to
the
your
right and she
partner.
witnessed
That's
her client,
awful.
her friend, having sex with Representative Gaetz and her friend at that
There's
time.
there's certain
Leopard does confirm that, according to his client, Gaetz was not aware of the girl's age at this time, but it is important to note that federal law doesn't care if you knew or not. It's the act itself that carries up to 15 years in prison in the state of Florida if convicted. As the Ethics Committee reported, victim A testified that she did not inform Gaetz that she was under 18 at the time, nor did he ask her age.
You know
She
what,
testified to the
though?
House that
You know
Representative
what?
Gaetz did not
You
know
fucking
her
know
friend's
that's a
age at the
child.
time
That's the
they had
thing.
sex-
I can't.
sexual intercourse.
I can't
And
be
when
like,
he
oh
found
well, you
out
didn't
about,
know. I've
her
seen
age,
kids. I've been
Gaetz
around
stopped
kids.
having
Like
sexual
my
intercourse with
siblings
her,
are very
and
young.
he
You
only
can tell
started
that's a
the sexual
child
intercourse
by how they
interactions
act.
later on when she turned 18.
So then it continued again.
That's correct.
As reporting from the Daily Beast seems to indicate,
Oh, I didn't
Greenberg
even think
learned of
about
the
this.
girl's actual age through
Yeah,
an
I
anonymous
know,
tip later that year. Greenberg is alleged
she's
to have
definitely
then
allergic
used
to
his status as a tax
dander.
collector to look up the victim's driver's
know they could
license
be
in the
allergic
system and confirm that she
to
was in
the
fact
cat's
17.
urine. I
Greenberg
never
then
gave that
allegedly
much
called
thought.
Gaetz over the phone and warned the
Sucks to
congressman to,
suck.
quote, steer clear
Can't
of
relate,
the
I don't
teen.
have
According to the
allergies.
ethics report, though, Gaetz, quote, maintained
Never gonna
contact,
die.
and less than 6 months after she turned
Just
18,
kidding.
he met up with her again for commercial
Definitely gonna
sex.
die,
It's also been alleged that Gaetz Venmoed the girl $900 through Greenberg shortly after she became an adult, attaching the message, hit up blank, using a nickname for the teen.
Hairless helps.
But how do we know about this alleged call anyway? Well, it
But
comes
if it
thanks to a
licks you,
letter that
okay.
Greenberg
that
reportedly
one
pinned
where,
to
I don't
Roger
know,
Stone in his
Nibs
own attempt to seek a
loves-
pardon from
so
Trump in
annoying. I'll
2020.
fall
And if this
asleep.
letter
I'll
obtained
wake
by
up
the
to him,
Daily
like,
Beast
licking the
is
same
real,
spot on my hand, and
it would be
hurts.
remarkably
It hurts. I'm
damning
like,
because
bro,
in it, Greenberg
leave me
seems to
alone.
confess
You're
to
weird.
just about everything. Referring to the 17-year-old, Greenberg allegedly told Stone that, quote, on more than one occasion, this individual was involved in sexual activities with several of the other girls, the congressman from Florida's 1st Congressional District, and myself. From time to time, gas money or gifts, rent, or partial tuition payments were made to several of
Paying
these
her
girls, including
off.
the individual who was not yet
Bribery.
18. I did see
Yeah.
the acts occur firsthand,
You think
and
so?
Venmo transactions, Cash App,
Shit.
or other payments were
He's so
made to these
sweet.
girls on behalf of the congressman. This is also where we get the supposed text messages between Greenberg
pin
and
him
Stone,
down
and it's
earlier.
where we see
He needed to
Greenberg
cut his
saying that
nails, and
Gaetz
he will
is
never
like a
let
brother
me.
to him. Greenberg also
Well, we
appears
got
to
him.
write,
We
quote,
got
my
him.
lawyers that I
Let's see
fired
here.
know the story about Matt Gaetz's involvement. They know he paid me to pay the girls and that he and I both had sex with the girl who was underage. And while I have not had any communication with Matt Gaetz, he absolutely has to know that the sex charge they hit me with would be what they hit him with. While Stone
What?
reportedly told the Daily Beast that he had never taken any formal steps to have Greenberg pardoned, he does admit to telling Greenberg to draft up a letter describing his legal problems, though he does not recall ever receiving.
Well,
said
if there's a president that's gonna pardon him, he's in office, unfortunately.
There's also the matter of online payments. The former congressman
oh,
was
yeah.
reported to have
You
sent
got caught with a
several
minor?
women in
Sure, I'll
addition to the
pardon you.
alleged minor.
Not like
These
he hasn't.
Venmo transactions,
Yuck.
which amounted to thousands of dollars over the course of a few
There should
years,
be things
included
that shouldn't be
incredibly
allowed to be
non-creepy
pardoned.
subject lines as
Harming
being my
children
friend,
and the
being
elderly
awesome,
should
and
be some
just
of them,
because,
like,
just
damn.
because, brother, you're in your mid-30s. What are you doing? In fact, some of these payments were reportedly
weird.
sent from his son Nestor's PayPal account. And I say son in quotation marks because Nestor is actually the little brother of his ex-girlfriend, who he just kind of refers to as his son, or he
So
does
weird.
now. He's previously referred to Nestor online as if he was a random kid he didn't know in this post from 2016, and here he is in 2017 calling Nestor his helper years before he publicly considered him his son.
As you guys can see, I've got my helper Nestor here.
Which, yeah, I guess his PayPal account may have allegedly helped to send those funds over, but it didn't exactly help him not get caught. Turns out, Gaetz may have sent even more money to women than previously thought, as the House Ethics investigation recently
I decided
revealed
I'm gonna do
around
5
$90,000 that had been sent to 12
So,
women from 2017 to 2020, which the Congressional Committee deemed was, quote, likely in connection with sexual activity and or drug use. While most of it was sent online, they do report that some received payment in the
Screwdrivers
form
in
of
here.
checks or
Like,
cash, which would include
my
the
God.
17-year-old, who testified
I'm the
that she had
worst.
been given $400 in cash by Gaetz on the evening of the July party, quote, which she understood to be payment for sex. In the days leading up to the House Ethics Committee releasing their full probe into his alleged misconduct, Gaetz took a page out of the Book of Drake with a statement he posted to Twitter. The Biden-Garland DOJ spent years reviewing allegations that I committed various crimes. I was charged with nothing, fully exonerated, not even a campaign campaign finance violation, and the people investigating me hated me. A few things worth mentioning here. One, that the federal investigation was opened up under the Trump bar DOJ, which Gaetz weirdly neglects to bring up. Two, the House Ethics Committee is bipartisan, currently led by a Republican. Another detail he seems to have left out. And three, fully exonerated is doing some real heavy lifting there. As reported in the New York Times, quote, investigators concluded that they could not make a strong enough case against him in court, in part because of a concern that some potential witnesses might not have stood up well under cross-examination. After all, Greenberg would have had every reason to cooperate with the feds to negotiate a lighter sentence, which the defense would have easily latched onto. And as Slate points out, some potential witnesses could have been fellow partiers or former youthful consorts, which could have also posed an uphill battle for prosecutors. But none of that is quite the same as being fully exonerated. Unfortunately, things aren't quite as black and white as the former congressman may want us to think they are. Gaetz went on to admit that in his single days, he often sent funds to women he dated. Sometimes even women he never dated, but who asked. Wow, what a nice guy. I didn't know he was chill like that. He goes on to write that none of these girls were below the age of 18, which is always a fantastic thing to put in the public statement, and assures us that his 30s were an era of working very hard and playing very hard too. Yeah, that seems to be the whole fucking problem here. While he categorizes his past behavior as embarrassing, he promises us it's not criminal and that he lives a totally different life now, which I will say, it's pretty funny to see a 42-year-old talking about his mid-30s as if it were his teenage years. Buddy, you weren't some silver spoon daddy's boy hoping to rush Sigma Chi. You were an elected member of Congress with a direct line of communication to the president, and also a silver spoon daddy's boy, but that's besides the point. And mind you, he wasn't new to this line of defense either. For years, Matt Gaetz had been shouting extortion from the rooftops, which even if he was being extorted, it doesn't mean he didn't commit a crime, making the rounds on TV, trying to defend the notion that the feds were out to get him and his family, and that he was totally innocent, which led to him unassumingly walking into the lion's den on Fox News. While he may have expected a full-fledged defense from Tucker Carlson, he ended up getting a little more resistance than he may have bargained for, even at one point seemingly trying to drag Tucker into the mix as well.
I can say that actually you and I went to dinner about 2 years ago. Your wife was there, and I brought a friend of mine, you'll remember her, and she was actually threatened by the FBI, told that if she wouldn't cop to the fact that somehow I was involved in some pay-for-play scheme, that she could face trouble. And so
I don't remember the woman you're speaking of or the context at all, honestly.
Hey, Tucker, come on. You remember when we all went out to eat together and nothing untoward was happening? You were there. You remember that night. I have no idea what you were talking about. Beautiful stuff, man.
The New York Times is running a story that I have traveled with a 17-year-old woman.
While the investigation charged on, it seemed possible that Matt Gaetz could be indicted at any moment. And while Greenberg's attorney Fritz Scheller made an effort to ignore questions on whether or not his client introduced any underage girls to Gaetz, in this same press conference, Scheller expressed disappointment in a lack of other prosecutions being made, which was in response to a question on whether or not he was shocked that Gaetz hadn't been arrested yet.
Did your client introduce Matt Gaetz to any underage girls for sexual relations?
All right, so I'm just going to let you sit down there, and so I can look over your head and ignore that question.
Are you shocked that Gaetz hasn't been arrested yet?
I'm shocked. I am disappointed by a number of prosecutions that haven't been brought.
Adding that he thought Matt Gaetz wasn't feeling very comfortable that day.
Does Matt Gaetz have anything to worry about? I'm sure Matt Gaetz is not feeling very comfortable today, all right?
Nonetheless, Matt Gaetz would start to feel pretty good early 2023 when it was officially revealed the DOJ investigation would be concluding without bringing charges against Gaetz, which we touched on earlier. In fact, the DOJ's reluctance to indict the man was the very impetus that reignited the Ethics Committee's own investigation, which promptly began interviewing the girls at the heart of the case. A move that I'm sure only infuriated Gaetz even more. While the feds may have been off his back, the congressman was now faced with a new challenge, one that meant his fate lied in the hands of his colleagues in the House of Representatives, leading many to wonder what the congressman's next move would be.
The drama in Congress continues. Moments ago, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy talking to the press, Today, House Republicans met behind closed doors to discuss the future of his job as Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz filed a motion to oust the Speaker.
After the 2022 midterms, Republicans gained a narrow majority in the House of Representatives. As a result, they needed to appoint the next Speaker of the House. But for the first time since the 1920s, a new Speaker wasn't decided on the first vote. In fact, it took 4 days and 15 separate votes to finally push California Representative Kevin McCarthy to victory, with Congressman Matt Gaetz challenging him to the very end, voting against McCarthy time and time again, which almost resulted in literal punches being thrown on the House floor. Just like the good old days. See, this is why we need to bring back
It was the good old
Ultimately,
days.
this demonstrated that while the Republicans may have been in control,
Here
there
we
were
are.
some very real cracks in their own party. Gaetz has long criticized McCarthy for working too much with Democrats, and when McCarthy signaled support for a spending plan championed by the Biden White House and Democratic Senate, Gaetz saw an opportunity to do something unprecedented. He filed a motion to vacate. In other words, he was kicking McCarthy's sorry ass to the curb. From there, an outright battle ensued. But in the end, Gaetz and his small team of defectors managed to prevail. Taking advantage of Democrats who weren't pleased with McCarthy's support of an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden, it only took a few disgruntled Republicans to make Kevin McCarthy go down in history as the first speaker to ever be abruptly removed during his term. What Gaetz had managed to pull off was historic. It goes without saying that a younger, less experienced congressman like Gaetz making a move to oust a seasoned party veteran was a controversial decision that didn't exactly make him any more popular in Washington. But Gaetz wasn't trying to make friends. He had a mission that some believed may not have been exclusively motivated by government spending. Reports indicate that when the House Ethics Committee reopened their probe into Gaetz in early 2023, the congressman expected the newly appointed McCarthy to shut it down right on the spot. But McCarthy would do no such thing. He felt it wasn't his place to tamper with an investigation like that, and while Gaetz claims to have never asked McCarthy to do this, McCarthy himself has indicated otherwise. At an event in April 2024, McCarthy outright told the audience, quote, "I'll give you the truth why I'm not speaker. It's because one person, a member of Congress, wanted me to stop an ethics complaint because he slept with a 17-year-old.
I'll give you the truth why I'm not speaker. It's because one person, a member of Congress, wanted me to stop an ethics complaint because he slept with a 17-year-old.
Which is insane. How can such a small number of people
before I ever became speaker, and that's illegal, and I'm not going to get in there. Did he do it or not? I don't know. But ethics is looking at it. There's other people in jail because of it. And he wanted me to influence it.
And there does seem to be some credibility to that narrative. The new speaker, Mike Johnson, went on to do the exact same thing that McCarthy had done. He capitulated to Democrats and allowed for more spending to happen. But Gaetz didn't force him out. Why, you're telling me Matt Gaetz isn't a man of his conviction after all? According to what someone close to McCarthy told The New Yorker, quote, "It was all about vengeance for Gaetz." Another report from the Daily Beast indicates Matt himself had bragged about knifing McCarthy as revenge for the ethics probe. While the Daily Beast did not quote their source specifically, out of concern that Gaetz might be able to figure out who leaked it, they do report that after reviewing correspondence, the former congressman, quote, relayed to a group of colleagues that his push to remove McCarthy was a direct response to the ethics investigation. He specifically blamed McCarthy for the return of the probe, according to two sources familiar with the conversation. With another senior GOP congressional staffer separately telling the magazine, quote, "I've heard him complain about Kevin because of it." Regardless, these two men have continued to spar ever since their historic showdown. And in case you thought McCarthy was the bitter one who can't move on, here's Matt Gaetz heckling the former speaker at this year's RNC, to which McCarthy responded by restating his claims to Matt's face.
One who's not coming back, and then the other part that you have. And the other part you have is one person who raised the issue. He's got an ethics complaint about sleeping with a 17-year-old. So that's the way they would go. So that's the biggest challenge we have.
And these claims would only be taken further in December of this year, when McCarthy told News Nation that Matt Gaetz, quote, wanted an excuse to resign from Congress as a last-ditch effort to prevent the Ethics Committee from releasing the details of their investigation. But that begs the question, what would this excuse to resign look like?
To be nominated by President Trump for that position was indeed the honor of my professional life.
All right, we've got another Trump appointment, and this is one that is probably going to surprise a lot of people because he was not on any of the lists that were floating around out there. He has now nominated Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz as Attorney General of the United States.
Insane.
When Trump announced that Matt Gaetz was being nominated as the next Attorney General, I immediately felt for this guy with a very similar name, Matthew Gertz, who's been known to tweet the words, "Oh no," every time Gaetz makes headlines for something. I mean, even if you agree with his politics, you can't deny it's a hilariously baffling pick, considering Gaetz hadn't been a practicing attorney more than 2 years before becoming a representative, and he's never been a prosecutor, though Matt did fall perfectly in line with the growing list of cabinet selections who may not have had the resume necessary for their respective positions, but were unabashed Trump bootlickers at the end of the day. With the amount of people Trump had to fire during his first term in office, which was, by my calculations, everyone, it might make sense why we're seeing the 47th president prioritizing loyalty over merit. But Gaetz was an especially mind-boggling choice, given that tiny likelihood of him actually being confirmed by the Senate. The little stunt he pulled with Kevin McCarthy nauseated even the most dyed-in-the-wool conservatives on Capitol Hill, and the then ongoing House ethics investigation wasn't doing him any favors either. Perhaps this is why, from the jump, we were already seeing Republicans writing off his nomination as a complete joke. I mean, just imagine for a second, having an attorney general who has beefed with Hassan Piker. It's hard to say Gaetz's timing didn't look completely deliberate, seeing that he ended up resigning from Congress mere days before the House Ethics Committee was scheduled to vote on releasing their investigation into him. As written in The Hill at the time, quote, "The panel will have no jurisdiction to investigate Gaetz since he is no longer a member of Congress, and its findings may never see the light of day." Gaetz pulled the ultimate Trump card, literally. With the help of Donald Trump nominating him to his cabinet, Gaetz was able to do what Kevin McCarthy was too sensible to do: kill the House Ethics Committee's investigation into his alleged sex crimes. A masterful gambit that made him look pretty guilty, but also rendered him unemployed after he shockingly withdrew his bid for Attorney General. So there you have it. In the span of just 8 chaotic days of non-stop media frenzy, this man went from being a 3-term congressman in the United States House of Representatives and being considered to lead the very Justice Department that had investigated him only a couple years prior, to being stripped of both of those titles.
Good. There we go. Here we go.
Resorting to selling his likeness on Cameo, of all places. Yeah, Cameo, since I guess Twitch didn't work out for him. This, my friends, is what a fall from grace looks like.
Hey, Lisa Kovac, it's your favorite former Congressman Matt Gaetz. I know you were bummed out when the news broke that I wouldn't be the next Attorney General. This is just such an exciting time to be an American.
Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise that Gaetz has taken to Twitter to do everything he can to save face. Attacking the witness's credibility is something he's been doing since the very beginning, emphasizing how not credible the DOJ found them to be. And I think this is something we should touch on really quick before we wrap up here. While the Ethics Committee does acknowledge that Joel Greenberg's credibility is in doubt, they also state that they have no reason to doubt the credibility of Victim A, the same Victim A who Gaetz tried to claim at one point didn't exist, even though the committee noted this was also the very girl who sent his buddy Greenberg to the slammer. The committee also made sure to emphasize that she, quote, cooperated with the DOJ's investigation for years and was let down by the justice system when reports circulated that the DOJ would be unlikely to pursue charges. The committee also makes it clear that the DOJ wasn't the most cooperative either, dodging FOIA requests and failing to comply with the subpoena by its due date as outlined in the ethics report. In January 2024, the, quote, DOJ provided no substantive response or explanation for its delay. Instead, DOJ simply stated that it does not provide non-public information about law enforcement investigations that do not result in charges. Though, as the committee points out in the very next sentence, quote, this policy is inconsistent with DOJ's historical conduct with respect to the committee and its
Well,
unique
why aren't
role
they
in
bringing
upholding the
charges if
integrity
they
of the
have
House. Basically, the DOJ should have been easier to work with, but because they
victim
weren't,
won't
they ended up
testify.
delaying a lot of the committee's investigation. The committee
They're
did
just
note,
like,
however,
not
that
worth
their
their
own
time,
investigation did not find, quote, sufficient evidence to conclude that Representative Gaetz violated the federal sex trafficking statute. Although Gaetz did cause the transportation of women across state lines for purposes of commercial sex, the committee did not find evidence that any of those women were under 18 at the time of travel, nor did the committee find sufficient evidence to conclude that the commercial sex acts were induced by force, fraud, or coercion. But mind you, this is alongside the committee's assertion that Gaetz seems to have committed a variety of other crimes, as their evidence points to. According to the report, the committee found, quote, substantial evidence that Gaetz violated, quote, state laws referring to sexual misconduct by, again, engaging in commercial sex and violating Florida's
just because they were over the
statutory
age of 18, he was
They also
still
found evidence of Gaetz using illicit
committing those
drugs, which he
crimes.
referred to in text messages as party favors, that he violated the House gift rule by receiving, quote, impermissible gifts in connection
Again,
with his
if he
travel
was
to the
working
Bahamas in
class,
September
straight to
2018,
jail.
in addition
If
to
he
him
was a
dispensing
minority,
special privileges to
we'd be in jail a
individuals
long
whom he
time
had a
ago.
personal relationship, and that he sought to obstruct the committee's investigation into his conduct. Not only did Gaetz refuse to sit down for in-person questioning, ignoring a subpoena and instead answering fragments of written questions, he also filed an emergency suit against Congress to prevent the release of the report the same exact morning it was scheduled to come out. Needless to say, it didn't work and that the report reached the media regardless, but it's important to emphasize here that Gaetz has done pretty much everything he can to try and keep this thing from being unsealed. And now that we've seen it, it's really no wonder as to why.
They always are. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This has been. So I'm going to work on some of the settings. Yuck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Okay. I'm going to work on some settings to... Come on. Don't be like that. To get this hopefully a bit better. The multi-stream kind of worked. Not really, but we'll figure that out. But thank you so much for hanging out, and thank you again for like communicating the technical errors. I really appreciate it. My shirt does match my nails. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I was really stoked. They were supposed to be like clear, like some kind of like glass look to them, but I like them. They'll be changed in about a week, so that's all right. I hope you have a great night. I will chat with you in Discord and check out those links that you sent me, and then I'm going to send you what I found on RedNote, because these dresses are insane. But I hope you have a great rest of your night. I should be live tomorrow, so if you're around, I'll chat with you then. Thanks again.